Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Discharge podcast. I am your host, Aarlon, and joining me today is Tamika Likes to Draw.
Hello, I am Tamika, and it feels very weird being in this non-hosting position.
Cool.
Well, actually, this is the second time I've not been host while on an episode, but the last time was also a seasonal discharge.
Today we're going to be talking about our first impressions of the summer 2022 anime season. The first show we're going to be talking about is Call of the Night. Do you remember enough of this one to summarize it, Coco?
A little bit, yeah. So Calling of the Night is what I jokingly describe as Twilight, but for boys, only a little bit funnier, and yeah. So basically, it's about this guy who, for some reason, stopped going to school and started going out and hanging out by himself in the middle of the night, and he meets a girl who just so happens to be a vampire, and the plot is about him wanting to become a vampire, but the only way he can become a vampire the only way a person can become a vampire in this universe is by falling in love with another vampire. So his goal is basically to just keep on hanging out with this girl until he falls in love with her so that he can become a vampire. That's the general summary of the show. But yeah.
I mean, this show, it was pretty good. The most striking thing about it, I think, was the visuals. It had very pretty colors. There were like a lot of dark blues and purples and turquoise. It had like a very distinct color palette.
The backgrounds in this show are very good, cool looking. They're like very beautiful, I guess. This show is like really well directed because almost every shot feels like it could be a poster or like a banner you could just have as like your desktop picture or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I'm super into like starry night, moonlit, anime posters, like the ones you find on Google and stuff. And every like shot of these was basically just that. It's a very good looking show.
Yeah, it's definitely like the visuals really made this show for me. Because like if you look at like the script on paper, it's all right. It's like a solid romance, I think. But when you add the nighttime theme, this show kind of has like an ongoing theme of like the vampire girl kind of represents the freedom and adventure of nighttime to the main character. So being able to see like how beautiful everything looks at night, I think really sells that it's appealing for him.
No, I definitely agree that the visuals are like the best part of the show for sure. I would probably even say that this show, I mean, I didn't watch every show this season, but of the ones that I have seen, probably the best looking one, at least in terms of the background art. Kind of like a little, like the characters are well animated, but like the art style itself I'm a little mixed on. It looks fine though. It's but like there's certain parts where like it'll be like a close up shot of the character, and like like those shots where like it lights up and there's like glowing lights in the background and everything. Yeah, it has those kinds of shots, really good looking.
Oh, and that reminds me, the main girl, very cute. It's another like unique design waifu of the season.
Yeah, this is. Oh yeah, that reminds me. This is one of those shows. I don't know if this is like a new trend. You could probably say this is something that's been happening in anime for like, well, probably since the dawn of anime's existence. But this does kind of, while it's a little bit different from what we've been getting because it's not a high school show, it does feel like another one of those guy has extremely boring life and amazing fantastical woman comes in and changes it.
Yeah, I
Those
no, I
kind of
totally
shows, you know.
agree. I observed that trend lately too. And yeah, I definitely that's like one of the first things I said in my notes is that she's a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah. But as far as the story goes, I don't know. I thought it was fine. Uh, I just found it somewhat amusing. Because going throughout the show, the first episode rather, I found it kind of amusing how the main character, whose name I did not get, is he kind of just casually goes like when she invites him to her house. He kind of just casually accepts that and doesn't ask any questions at all.
I mean, he was way too chill with all of this, really. He just
Yeah,
kind of went
like
along with it.
like when he found out that she's a vampire, like he doesn't even like question like, wait a minute, vampires are actually real? What the hell? Like his first concern, and to be fair, this would probably be anyone's first concern. His first concern is like, wait, you bit me. Does this mean I'm a vampire too? But like at no point is he like, wait a minute, vampires are actually real. So
Except
I'll,
apparently he wants to become a vampire.
yeah, like you
And by the way, I feel like I wasn't completely sold on that because him wanting to be a vampire is that like he's after this like night out with her showing him the how cool nighttime is or whatever. He's like, "Man, I want every night to be like this. I want to be a vampire like you." But like literally all they did is like she caught him trying to buy alcohol and then they like walked around a bit, high-fived some drunk guys, one of which puked on his shoes, and then they went back to her house and that was the whole night.
Well, I mean, I guess to someone whose life is not very eventful to begin with, that seems like a very eventful, an eventful night. I mean, in all fairness, if you went out one night and like a super attractive woman, who's a vampire invited you to her house, you probably would also be like, man, I too want every night to end with a super attractive woman who just so happened to catch me buying alcohol, inviting me to my house, even though we didn't actually have sex.
Well, except the biting, the blood sucking, they like really. I watched like a couple more episodes of this, and they like really hammer in the point that it is a metaphor for sex. They like keep saying it outright and talking about it in the show.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It definitely comes across that way, like the kind of show that would do that. Actually, that yeah, this show does have like its fair share of like it's not like it's definitely not the most sexual show of this season at all compared to some of the others we might talk about, but it's got its fair share of fan service. I remember
The way they animate her is like so detailed.
Yeah, I remember like in the first episode, sometimes they would do like close-ups of her body and like the way they color her body compared to how they colored the show in like other like in like regular scenes, it's like wow, they really they really went into it here. Like someone was unbelievably committed to making her body look as sexy as possible. Which is not to say that like the rest of the
Yeah,
show
it was
didn't
like
look
super
good, but, yeah.
three-dimensional.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, damn, the person was really into it for sure. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that show.
So, it was probably a drop for me after the first episode, but then after watching a couple more, I gotta say I became more invested in their romance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a really well written romance.
Yeah.
So like I would recommend the show to like if you like the night, or if like vampires are cool to you and you're looking for a romance, give the show a shot, because I mean it looks really good. It's solidly written. It's a fun time.
Oh yeah, I should probably mention.
I give it a 7.
I should probably mention, because I was looking at the staff that worked on this show. Well, in the studio as well. The studio is Leiden Films, and something that I found, or Lydon Films, and something that I found mildly amusing is that for how beautiful this show is, this studio put out a pretty horrible looking show that you might be familiar with. It's a sequel of a slightly better looking show that came out in 1997. This studio put out Berserk 2016. And when I found that out,
my God,
and I was like, this is such a jump in quality. Holy shit. I mean, they did put out...
Yeah, they're trying to serve penance for their crimes.
They did put out, like, a couple other good-looking shows between then and now. Like, they did Other Side Picnic and Kajik Records. They also did Senyu, which is another show I watched. And also, I looked at who directed this show. And it's co-directed by... I'm just looking at my notes here. A guy called Itamura Tomoyuki, who did key animations on the Monogatari series. Then he also worked on Madoka Magica, which would explain why the show...
That's not surprising at all.
Yeah, which would explain why the show is so good looking, because the I've only seen Kizu Monogatari, but they're pretty
the other
good-looking
vampire,
shows.
the other super well animated vampire thing, of course.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And the other director is a guy called Miyanishi Tetsuya, and he worked on My Hero Academia, and he also did some directing on Super Crooks, which are also pretty good-looking shows, but the second guy doesn't have as much to his name as the first guy. I just thought it was worth mentioning because those other series, particularly the Monogatari series, is well known for how good it looks, and I think that's a carryover into this show from Tomoyuki. But yeah, I just hope this isn't. I hope this isn't one of those shows that dips in quality as it goes on.
I wouldn't say the animation is like that impressive. It's mainly just the way it looks.
Well, it does that thing where sometimes like the goes up in quality in certain scenes. Like for example,
Sakuga.
Like for example, in the scene where she's about to bite him. I hate that, by the way. Like, I get why people are so... I get why it's impressive, but, like, it's so jarring.
It's for the fetish, Coco.
No, I mean, like...
It's not for you.
I mean, like, the sudden shift in quality. Like, it happens in a lot of shows, and I get those moments look cool, but I always find it jarring when that happens. Like, I'd rather have either the mid animation all the way through, or the super good animation all the way through.
I don't think that's fair, because, like, everything does that, right? You want to, when the cool moment comes, like, even, like, you know, in my comic, right? Most of the time the art looks like shit, and then when something cool is happening, suddenly it looks like actual art.
That's like some One Punch Man type, because One Punch Man kind of does that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, anything else to say on this show?
Well, I've seen a lot of other people say that that it's a good show. I've seen it gain traction on Twitter. Wasn't really all that interested in watching it after the first episode, but it seems like it might actually be worth watching, because you said it's pretty good after the first episode, and I've seen other people say so as well. So I might check it out. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah.
All right, then. Next is my... Let me see if I can remember this right. My stepmom's daughter is my ex. I don't know why they wouldn't just say
I just wrote
My
in my notes.
stepsister is my ex.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I wrote it in my notes. My stepsis is my ex.
Oh, I did have the thought, like, wait, what if they're saying it like that because the stepmom is also going to be like a potential romantic interest?
That wouldn't surprise me.
God help us.
Well, I've read enough doujins with that plot. They might as well make an actual anime with that plot.
No. Bad. This show is, I mean, the title basically says it all. It's about a guy and a girl who are exes, and then their parents got married, and their parents don't know that they used to be dating, so they're trying to be like, play the good sibling role and pretend like they're brother and sister. But they're like, they have like the normal stereotypical relationship between exes where they're like kind of bitter and bicker with each other, but there's also like definitely still some lingering feelings underneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Most of this episode was just kind of this cycle of like they bicker about something, and then the girl like starts teasing the guy, and then she like goes too far and embarrasses herself. Then there's like a tender moment, and then it gets spoiled.
Mm. So like the plot of the first episode, I remember like a tiny bit. It's like they're sort of competing with each other to see who gets all flustered and gets out of the sibling role first. And like whoever loses is the one who has to become the younger sibling. Because they're both born on the same day, but they're both like bickering over like who should be the older one between the two of them. So the whole episode is about them sort of like teasing each other, and whoever gets flustered first and too caught up in their feelings is the one who loses and becomes the younger sibling. I don't know. I don't really have that much to say about this show because, well, I don't really remember much, but there isn't much to remember in the first place.
I love that at the end they're like finally like having a tender moment, and the guy is like, you know, being like romantic, and the girl gives in and is like having a tender moment with him, and he's like, psych, I got you.
Well, like at the end, they're almost like, isn't like, I might be misremembering, but isn't there a scene where they're basically about to start making out on the couch and then their parents walk in on them or something?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's about the fetish.
I think
this is obviously a fetish show.
This is one of those shows where it's kind of like, it's basically about teasing the audience, basically, with the idea that they could, like, it's sort of like a will they, won't they kind of thing. So, like, if you're super into that, well, I was gonna say if you're super into that, then you might like this show, but the thing is, and I know it's unfair to make assumptions about a show just based off of the first episode alone, but it really doesn't seem like there's a whole lot else going on there. Like, it kind of just seems like the whole thing is centered around the two of them, and that's about it. But I'm sure, like, more stuff gets added as the show goes on.
This is a show for a certain kind of anime viewer. If you like trash, if you're one of those, like, trash taste people who likes, like, Rent a Girlfriend or, like, Ero Manga Sensei, this show might be for you. Because it's probably going to go on forever and take like 100 chapters to deliver on the romance.
This show definitely
are
is
into that.
This show definitely is in a similar part to what do you call it? One of those shows that you just mentioned, drawing a blank. Not Aramanga Sensei. Rent a Girlfriend. There you go. It's definitely in a similar range to one of those shows. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about the show other than I guess it's a kind of a good-looking show. MC, whose name I don't remember, looks like Kirito from Sword Art Online. Kirito clones remain undefeated. They're still here. They're still a thing. They're never gonna go away. I didn't look up what studio made this show, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was A1 Pictures. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty bottom of the barrel. I do like them as a couple. I want them to get together. I'm just not willing to
See them get
suffer
together.
through. Yeah. I mean, this was very tedious to watch, especially like right after Call of the Night, which is a good show.
Yeah.
Next to that, this just felt so generic and bland.
Mm-hmm. If you want a step sibling show, go and watch Domestic Girlfriend. It is better than this. The ending is horrible, but we just pretend the ending didn't happen. Go watch that instead. Or read it.
That seems
rather.
to happen a lot with these kinds of shows.
Yeah. No, the ending of Domestic Girlfriend is horrible. I'm not gonna go into it here, but it is such a bad ending. But aside from that, go read it. It's good.
So, very shining endorsement, Coco. I'd give this show like a 4 out of 10. Have anything else to say about it?
No, that's about it.
Alright. So next is... When will Ayumi make his move?
Oh, this show. I literally have nothing to say about this show. Literally nothing.
This is another, like, pretty simple romance anime. It's basically the premise of this one. The first episode didn't really have a plot. It was more just, like, little skits. But it's about a boy and a girl who are the lone members of their, like, middle school shogi club, which is, like, Japanese chess.
Mm-hmm.
And the boy is like super direct, and he'll just make these really sincere compliments to the girl, which obviously gets her like super flustered. And internally she's like, oh man, like this guy must have like a crush on me. I have to get him to like confess. So she like kind of teases him to try and get him to confess. And the guy is just like totally straight-faced, ignoring it. But then internally he's like, oh fuck, oh shit. I can't confess to her because I promised her that I promised myself that I would not confess to her until I beat her at shogi. But she's so fucking good at shogi, I cannot beat her.
So he has to beat her
And the
at
show
the
is
game first.
pretty much just like a cycle of that over and over for like jokes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this show because this is one of the shows where during a group watch I wasn't really paying attention and I didn't rewatch it. It just seemed so like very low energy, and that's one of the kinds of shows that are very difficult for me to pay attention to.
Yeah. I don't blame you at all.
Yeah.
This show was really slow because the first watch I was like, I also wasn't paying attention. I was so bored. And then I rewatched it on 1.5 speed, and it felt like normal speed.
It definitely sounds like you have a slightly better impression of the show after your rewatch than you did when you watched it the first time.
Yes. I mean, it was still really boring, but it was definitely better at higher speed.
Yeah. Would you say that you're willing to watch the entire show? Like, no, I'm kidding.
Fuck no. I mean, so my take on this show is it was a big disappointment for me because going in, I just hear shogi romance anime. And for one, I'm like kind of interested in shogi. I don't know really anything about it. So I'm thinking, in my head, I'm picturing a sports anime, like if anyone's familiar with Hikaru no Go, it's a Go anime by the same author as Death Note, apparently.
Interesting.
And it's kind of about like a rivalry between the two main characters, and they kind of like keep elevating themselves at Go to like chase after each other. You know, rival stuff. I was kind of like picturing like something like Hikaru no Go, except they canonically want to fuck instead of just in our headcanon, you know? So then, when I started this show, and I realized, oh, the shogi doesn't come into the plot at all. Like, we know nothing about the games they're playing except that the guy is losing.
And the guy has to beat her to confess to her.
Yeah.
See, this...
It was just very disappointing.
This whole talk of chess anime reminds me of one time in One Piece when we were arguing about Revolutionary Girl Utena, and I was talking about how I hate the fights, and I said that they could battle it out in chess for all the difference it makes, and someone said, "Oh, so you do get the point of Utena," and I was like, "Oh," and now I'm just thinking of like a show with the exact same plot as Utena, only instead of sword fights, it's chess. So it's a chess anime where they're battling out for this girl who has some kind of magic power, but they're doing it in chess instead. And in all fairness, I mean, it's totally possible for there to be an anime like that with chess if we can have an anime like that with card games. So there you go.
Anime can do anything.
Yeah. Somebody get on that. Utena, but with chess instead of swords. You can call it whatever comes after adolescence. Adulthood. Adulthood of Utena. Alright, I'm gonna stop talking about that now.
Alright. So, this show... I mean, obviously it's not for me. My notes just say, where's the shogi?
Maybe it gets more relevant as the show goes on. Oh wait, how many episodes have you seen?
I watched the first one and a little bit of the second one.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of just more of the same. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. It's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say if you like shoujo and you like chess or shogi, then maybe check this one out.
If you like shoujo and shogi, check this one out.
Yeah.
Alright. Next show.
Okay. Next show is Engage Kiss. You said you didn't remember the plot to this one, right?
No. I actually don't. The only thing I remember is that one kiss scene that made me really uncomfortable because of how it was animated. It looked very rapey and forceful.
Yeah. So, this anime is about... It's in a world where sometimes the people just randomly, like, transform into these crazy monster alien-looking things and start wreaking havoc. Mm-hmm. And we don't really have any context as to, like, what these things are or what's going on, really. But the government obviously has to deal with this because it's a problem. So they have, like, private contractors that kill these monster things for them. And the main character is extremely broke, and he is one of these contractors. So the first episode is just like he bids on the contract and he wins it. And then he also has like a yandere GF, I think. I don't quite understand what the relationship was.
Yeah, she like lives in his apartment, and I remember like in the first episode he like gives her the keys to his house.
Yeah.
She keeps breaking in anyway.
She doesn't... Yeah, she can walk through his wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they go to fight these alien things, the two of them, or these monster things. And they're having a hard time, and then suddenly the girl is like, we need to do the power ritual or something. And the guy's like, oh, all right. And he walks up to her, and then suddenly the animation budget goes up $1,000, $1 million, $1 billion, and we just see this incredibly detailed, wet kiss between these characters. And then it gives them like a love boost, I guess. And suddenly we get like a super cool, well animated fight against these alien things. And they win, obviously. That's the first episode.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I mean, I remember like bits and pieces here and there. Like, I remember thinking at the beginning of the episode, I was worried for a second that this was going to be another MMO virtual reality show, cause like he goes into like a digital area to like meet up with the other people who are like in his line of work. And for a second, I was really worried this is going to be like another Sword Art Online.
Yeah, that was kind of random that there was just like virtual reality.
Yeah, because it's not really connected to the rest of the plot, is it?
And apparently this is based on a gacha game. Delirium said that. And it's getting like 50 episodes.
50?
Yeah. Or like a bunch.
Damn.
I don't know exactly. This one...
Maybe they'll be centered around different characters, I don't know.
Once again, this one looked good. The animation was really nice. The monster designs were like really cool and unique. They're like these weird red alien looking things with like... The main one had like a glass tank around his torso, and he like summoned these weird dog things. It's pretty neat.
But you know, the plot, the way you described the plot just now, kind of reminded me of Generator Rex. So
yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah, like it very much like with the Evos and stuff, where people just randomly turn into monsters because of the nanites and stuff. I suppose the only difference is the hero in that actually turns them back into humans instead of just killing them. But you know. And
Generator Rex is much better than this show, for the record.
Yes, it is actually good. Too bad it got canceled.
That's sad. The main issue with this show for me was that like they just don't really tell us what's going on. It feels like they jump straight into like focusing on the fetish stuff with like the, oh, look at the cute girlfriend and she wants him to kiss or whatever, but they never like explain to us the why.
That's actually very interesting for an anime that's based on a gacha game, because I mean, I'm fairly sure I haven't seen any of those, but like one thing I do know about shows that are based on gacha games, or any games really, is that they tend to be overtly descriptive of what's going on. It's almost like they're giving you a tutorial of the game within the show. So it's actually kind of interesting how there's no elaboration on what's going on there. But I imagine it's something that they go into the further into the show. Like, this is probably one of those shows that front loads you with everything the show's about, and then it sort of goes into the details later on, probably.
Surely they'll address it.
Yeah. They'd have to at some point. Maybe it's like, go and play the game to know what the fuck is going on here. I don't know.
It's an interesting marketing strategy.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if it works for like fucking Final Fantasy 15, then why not? With Kingsglaive and whatever. But yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a 4 out of 10. I don't think I have anything else to say either. Next show is Rwby. Rwby Winter Queen? What's it?
Ice Queendom. Rwby Ice Queendom?
Yes, Rwby Ice Queendom.
Yeah.
So this is an anime adaptation of the Rooster Teeth show, the same guys as Red vs. Blue. They made like a CG anime type thing.
And Sonic for Hire.
Which was pretty popular a while back. And now it's getting an anime adaptation.
It's a Japanese anime adaptation of a Western wannabe anime.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was oh, no, you go.
I didn't really follow the plot of the first episode. It was kind of like eyes glazed over. The second episode was when stuff actually started happening, because Rwby is like, it's kind of like a Harry Potter like magic school type thing is the setting, but they fight with like gun scythes. The draw of it really is the style. It has like really cool character designs and awesome fight scenes, that sort of thing. It's very rule of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So the first episode was mostly just kind of rushing through the first few episodes of Rwby and cramming it into one anime episode. That they like, I don't know, we meet all the characters and see like how they end up going to the school. Our main character, Rwby, just randomly, she's just like shopping at a convenience store, and some guys just randomly come in and start robbing it, and one walks up to her and is like, "Hey, hands up." And she's like, "What? Are you robbing me?" I was like, "Yeah." And then she just beats the shit out of them and chases down the leader of the group, but he like escapes.
As I understand it, this probably isn't like this probably shouldn't be your first exposure to Rwby, or at the very least you probably shouldn't base your thoughts on the actual Rwby show off of this anime, because when we were watching it, Delirium was saying that they do strip the show a bit of its personality and its humor, just a little bit. It doesn't feel quite...
Yeah, it definitely felt more like a standard anime.
Yeah. And obviously because it glosses over everything that happens in the introductory part of the original show, I think there's an assumption on the part of people making the anime that you've probably already seen the original Rwby, which is probably why they gloss over everything. Yeah, I don't remember.
So I have seen the original Rwby. Years ago, my cousin was like really into Rwby, and he talked me into watching it. So I watched like 5 seasons or something. I watched most of Rwby. Then, years later, the like H-Bomber guy video about it came out. And I saw that and I was like, oh shit.
What, the disappointment one?
I totally forgot. What?
Is it the disappointment one?
Yeah. It's like Rwby is disappointing, and here's why. It's like 5 hours or something, or like 8 hours, something crazy like that.
That's some mother type shit right there.
So I see this video, and it's like, oh shit, this show just erased itself from my mind. I forgot that it existed, and now watching this video, I have no recollection of like anything that happened in this show.
Mm-hmm.
So, from my opinion on it, obviously, like, I feel like that's kind of an indictment of it, that I didn't really care for it much then or find it very memorable. Because, like, back then, that's like a young me, he'll watch anything. He'll watch a complete shit anime and be like, whoa, this is so pog. So, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the original Rwby, but I might just not be the target audience because, like I said, it's really for people who like cool fight scenes and designs and stuff, you know?
Yeah. At the very least, I don't know, just based off of what Delirium was saying, the original probably is the better between the two, but it might be too early to tell. I have no idea how long the anime is actually going to be. Like, if it's just going to be like a short, like, 12, 20 episode thing, or if they're planning on going as long as the original show did. Or something.
I mean, so personally, I think I like this one better just because. So this show is
because you're a weeb.
CG.
Because you're a weeb.
This show
that's
is
why.
CG, I think. I am a weeb, but I also like Western animation. I like some Western cartoons.
Yeah. No, I'm just joking.
This show is CG mostly.
Is it?
Or I think it is. It's hard to tell because it looks so good. CG has gotten so fucking good in new anime, I swear.
I wouldn't assume that because it actually looks very... If it is CG, it's very well done because aside from like maybe backgrounds and stuff, I wouldn't be able to tell that at all.
There was definitely... I felt like the fight scenes were definitely CG. The fight scenes...
It might have done that thing where it alternates between both.
Yeah, probably. The fight scenes were probably my favorite action in the whole season. They looked like extremely cool. It was like super fluid. The way like it was just really well choreographed on top of looking like really nice.
Yeah. It was a very good.
I was
show.
like I basically slept through the first episode until that fight scene, and then it like woke me up because it was so cool.
Mm-hmm. The last one where they're fighting outside of the store.
Yeah, and Rwby just chases down this random robber, I guess.
Yeah, it was pretty well animated for sure.
The action in the second episode was less cool because it was like a monster fight, but it was still good.
So, as usual, I was looking... Well, actually, I didn't get the staff for this. I only got the studio. This was animated by Shaft, who did Madoka Magica and Revolutionary Go Utena. See, me bringing up Utena earlier was quasi-relevant, which would probably explain why it's a good show. I didn't look at who directed it or who the animators were, but it looks like it's at least in good hands at the very least. Which is
it was really surprising to me that a big studio like Shaft would take on this show. I didn't realize Rwby was that big.
Yeah. Well, you see people talk about it online here and there. It probably has like a decent enough following that they were interested in. Well, I don't know who approached who, but they were interested enough on taking on the task of doing that. Maybe they're looking to... Do you think
people watch it in Japan?
Rwby? I mean, it's possible. I mean, obviously, I mean, it is possible because it looks like anime, and I know that, like, in Japan, there is kind of a thing where, well, I know it's not all the time, but sometimes if a show doesn't look like it was made in Japan, then they just won't watch it, because they're very much about their own stuff over there. But possibly, I mean, if there is a Japanese dub of the original series, then maybe, or at the very least a subbed version with Japanese subtitles. It also depends on like how into, because I think you mentioned how Rwby is main appeal is the action scenes, but part of it might also be, I mean, I know nothing about it, but just based off of what Delirium was saying, part of it might also be the humor too. And you know, if the Japanese are super into, you know, Western comedy, the good kind, I can see them enjoying it. I mean, I can't imagine like a Western property getting like an anime adaptation from like a well-known studio unless it was popular in Japan. Unless like the people licensing it out to the studio paid like a lot of money to make that happen. But yeah, at the very least, if there isn't an audience for the original show, this might bring an audience for Rwby in Japan, and maybe it will interest people into checking out the original series, possibly, potentially. And then maybe it will lead into a massive max revival of Rwby completely.
I'm very curious about that because, you know, it's like I feel like a lot of Western anime-ish shows tend to not do very well in Japan because of like the cultural uncanny valley, right? Like Avatar, The Last Airbender, isn't very big in Japan because of that.
Well, it's just one of those things. Well, I mean, I actually heard it was fairly popular over there. I'm not entirely sure how true that is. But it's also one of those things where, like, with something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, yeah, it does take a lot of anime influence, but just by looking at it, you can still tell that it is a Western show. Like the way the characters' faces are animated and everything, it's very
Yeah.
different from how it is in like an actual anime, which is kind of interesting because the characters were actually designed by a Japanese artist, but you know, that's well, I mean, that artist also is mildly influenced by like Disney and stuff, so that would explain why the Western influence is visible in something like The Last Airbender. But I
I
don't
mean,
know.
hey, Disney invented anime.
Yeah, technically speaking. I mean, they basically inspired its existence. Uh, but yeah.
So yeah, if you don't like Donald Duck, you're not a real weeaboo. True anime fans love Mickey Mouse.
True anime fans love Kingdom Hearts. That's the most anime you will ever see Disney characters be.
Yeah, if you think about it, Kingdom Hearts is the most anime thing in existence.
It takes the characters that inspired anime and turns them into more anime than they already were.
Yeah, exactly. And then they put it in a super contrived anime plotline. It's
Yes.
so anime.
And that's why it's shocking that there isn't a Kingdom Hearts anime yet. Get on it, Square Enix. Actually, there
That
was
is
planned.
surprising.
There is a manga, but there was some. I mean, it's a slight tangent, but there was some leaked concept art of a Kingdom Hearts cartoon where the characters were less anime looking and more Renaissance Disney looking, and a lot of people are glad that that show got canceled because, like, what the fuck? The whole charm is anime meets Disney. Don't turn the anime characters into Disney-like characters. That defeats the whole point. Come on, guys. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's all I have to say about Rwby, even though I was just talking about Kingdom Hearts, not Rwby, but
I'll definitely watch more of this one just to see how it turns out. Cuz I'm sort of interested in Rwby, but I definitely don't think I'd want to rewatch the original show. So I kind of have hope that they'll like streamline the plot a bit. And I mean, it looks good, so I'll definitely keep watching this one just to see where it goes.
So you're hoping this will be like a good sort of abridged replacement of it then?
Yeah, exactly.
Like one you can watch in place of the original series. I sure hope no one gets triggered hearing that.
Well, I mean, don't hate me, Rwby fans. It's just not for me, I guess. I'm
Yeah.
a different demographic.
Mm-hmm.
I was never a Rwby super fan, so I mean, certainly check out the original show first.
Yeah. I might someday, possibly. I actually feel kind of dumb. Just one last thing, because I always thought that the yellow-haired girl was Rwby because she was the one I saw people talking about the most whenever people brought up that show. And then now I'm like, oh, that's kind of dumb because there's obviously the character who wears red, so obviously she's Rwby. Like, what the hell? Why would a character that's all yellow be called Rwby? I don't know.
It's got sort of like a fairy tale motif, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she must be based on like Little Red Riding Hood, right? Because she's got the red hood.
She kind of looks like it, yeah. Also, I completely
Rwby,
forgot
by the
what
way,
yellow...
is my waifu. Best girl.
I forgot what the yellow-haired girl's name is. I'm just gonna call her Yellow.
Weiss?
Possibly. I don't know. Anyway, next show.
That might be wrong. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next show is Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World.
Oh, hell yes.
the best anime of the season, of course. This is an isekai.
It sure is one.
It starts off with our titular main character putting on a like VR headset or whatever and going into a video game. And he starts out in like a small village, and he's immediately thrown into a bandit encounter. And he just like walks up and very brutally slaughters these bandits, and he's like, haha, this game is so easy, this game sucks. And then he finishes and he's like, all right, time to log out. Where's the log out button? What the fuck? And then suddenly it just like flashes back to him signing up for this game, and you see the TOS, and it says like, warning, if you enter this game, you will never be able to return. And he just clicks yes. So he's like, oh shit, I'm stuck in...
Was it never able to return, or never able to return until you beat it?
I think it just said like, you will not be able to return. Warning.
Can you imagine if like actual VR games were like that?
You gotta read the TOS.
Yeah, you do.
Upon finding this out, he's like horrified because he's like, since I'm stuck in this game, that makes it like real life. So I just committed murder, apparently.
Yeah.
But whatever, he gets over it pretty fast. And the villagers are like all grateful. And they're like giving him his share of the loot since he killed them. And he notices like, hey, there's a scarf missing or something. So they look into it and they find like one of the villagers tried to steal it. And they're like, yeah, sorry about that. So we're going to sell this man into slavery, since that's the normal punishment for stealing in our world. And our heroic main character hears this and he's like, yeah, okay.
Repeal the 14th.
Yeah. So they go to sell him, and he's like gonna get a cut since it was his bandana. And they sell this guy to like a slave trader. And the slave trader is like, hey, do you wanna like talk in private? And our main character's like, yeah, that's not suspicious. And so they like start talking, and the slave trader is like, hey, so I have like female slaves. Would you like be interested in this female slave? You might be interested to hear that she's consented to having sexual relations with you. And the heroic main character is like, Pog, I gotta have this sex slave.
Oh.
Like, I'll totally take her. And the guy's like, oh, well, she'll be this much. And he's like, oh, shit, man, I don't have the money for her. But the slave trader's like, it's all right. If you can get the money together in a week, I'll hold on to her until then. And the main character is like, yes, this is my new goal in life. I finally have a purpose.
Oh,
And that's where the first episode leaves off.
guys, do not repeal the 14th Amendment. That was the wrong amendment. I just googled that to double check. It is the wrong amendment.
What's the 14th?
The 14th Amendment is granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. I meant to say the one that when people say like people in jail are still forced to like do labor and like that's part of the Constitution or something. And, like, people want that to be removed because people say, oh, slavery's not gone. Technically, criminals in the United States are slaves because they're forced to do manual labor when they're in jail. Repeal
it's
whatever...
like the highest prison population in the world. Like in the top 10 or something.
Repeal whatever amendment that one is. Not the 14th. The 14th is fine.
Hell yeah, get those anchor babies out. I'm just kidding. Don't hate me. That's not a serious political take.
Harem Isekai, or Isekai Labyrinth. Damn, I forgot the name of the show. What's the show called again? I got so caught up in trying to correct myself.
Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World.
Harem in...
Terrible title.
Why are all these names so long?
We also didn't see the Labyrinth, so...
Yeah. But, like... Okay, so obviously there's the whole thing about him being trapped in another world and him being a dumbass. One of the things that was kind of striking to me within like the first couple of seconds, because before they show him like killing all those bandits, and in like the first couple seconds of the show, it's just like a clip of like, it's like a grayscale clip out of context of him laughing over like the bodies that he just killed, and I was like under the and they like don't show his complete face. I was like under the impression that this was going to be like some really dark, gritty show, like like I guess Redo of a Healer-esque, especially with the slaves and stuff.
Yeah,
but in a way, it's more like a light-hearted version of that. Like it's weird, kind of like how graphic it is, because I feel like a lot of other shows in this genre are not that graphic when it comes to violence. Like, yeah, they'll show it, but they won't show like blood spurting all over the place the way this one did.
Yeah. I mean, they showed him beheading a guy.
Yeah. So I get like this weird impression, like especially later on with the fan service, like this. Because if you go on 9 Anime, or I'm assuming it's on Crunchyroll too, there is both a censored and an uncensored version of the show.
It's only censored on Crunchyroll, which
that makes sense.
Defeats the purpose of this show.
I mean, it makes sense because it's Crunchyroll, but yeah. And the uncensored version, there's obviously fan service in the show, and there's like bare titties just there with nipple and everything, and like close-up shots on camel toes and stuff.
Yeah, there was like another like Sakuga moment of a chick just like slapping her own ass, and it just like very realistically jiggled.
Mm-hmm. So, like, there's this weird thing where, like, this show, I feel like, is trying to be... It's, like, trying to be in the same genre that sort of was started by, like, Sword Art Online and the like, but, like, also trying to be more mature in a weird way, but, like, not necessarily, because, like, it's more mature in terms of what it's willing to show, but, like, it's still fairly lighthearted. Like, it's not, like, super dark. It's no Redo of a Healer, even though the guy's getting slaves. It's no... Well, I only know that the first episode of Goblin Slayer...
It tries to, like, justify it. It's like, no, it's okay. They like being slaves.
Yeah, it's like with... It's like with Pokemon,
up, you know?
It's like with Pokemon where it's like, no, they get happier the more you make them fight, you know? It's not like dog fighting. They actually get happier when you do it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. when the Charmander bit my Squirtle, was screaming its lungs out. I don't know if it's happy. That's a reference to the Pokemon Origins anime. Go check that out. But yeah, no, I went on 4chan. I haven't seen the second episode of this, but I went on and I saw some people sharing images of it, which this does seem like the kind of show that loners on 4chan would share images of. and there's like, and it's just, I saw like the screen caps, and I'm like, this looks like a show that turns into verging on porn, because it's like, I don't know if it was like the MC, but like there was someone holding one of like the orange-haired girl, I think. There was someone holding her boobs, and there was someone that was about to put their mouth on those boobs, and I was like, is this like, because you know how you'll have like some shows like I don't know, the only ones I can think of are like Yosuga Sora and Akisora, where they have like actual sex in them, but they're not like as explicit as actual hentai. I was like, is this gonna be one of those shows where it has like, where it's basically softcore porn sometimes? But then I was,
it's definitely already softcore porn just from like the first episode.
yeah. I guess what I mean is like, is it gonna be like those shows, or like Redo of a Healer, where it has actual sex in it? Is this gonna be one of those shows? Because when some of the more like nudie shots were coming in the group watch, I was starting to get a little uneasy, because I was like, hang on a second, oh, am I about to watch anime characters having sex with my friends on Discord? Like, is the
porn group watch? All right,
porn group watch? I was like, is this actually about to happen? But thank God it didn't.
Yeah. I agree that this show, it definitely couldn't make up its mind about like who it's for or what it wants to be. It's kind of like flip-flopping between like, oh, it's like a fun isekai where he has like video game powers, to like it's porn.
Yeah.
to I don't know. I watched some of the second episode and it was pretty bad. It like it showed like his future, where he like comes back to the starting village and now he has like a giant harem with him, and he meets this kid and he realizes this kid is his son, because apparently between scene changes in the first episode he like had sex with some villager.
Oh.
And he's just like all sentimental and like gives him a sword.
Wait, so the second episode is just a time skip?
I assume it like goes back to current times. I dropped it after the flashback or flash forward because it was stupid.
I mean, that's fair, to be honest, because the impression I get with this show is that this is the kind of show, because it doesn't really seem like it has an intriguing plot. This is the kind of show that you're going to be watching if you're really horny and for some reason don't want to watch actual hentai.
Just watch porn.
Yeah.
Just watch
porn.
I mean,
I don't know. The thing is, I don't know. Us being people that watch anime, I don't know if we can really say that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's just not a lot here.
But at least with other shows, even if they do have fan service or fetish material, there's usually something else there too. So,
exactly.
Whereas here, it doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot much else to it.
I mean, maybe I'm just a little biased because, like, this main character sucks. He's an awful person. But it's not like... The anime doesn't seem to think he's an awful person.
It's like it's kind of like Redo of a Healer in that sense. Because in Redo of a Healer, they have the protagonist in that show also. I actually finished that show, I don't know why. But it has the character do a lot of morally questionable things. Like, a lot. But, like, at no point, like the most that they ever like challenge that character and his view is like is he gonna become slightly less vengeful and actually view the people he's brainwashed as actual human beings? Is he actually starting to care for them? But then it's kind of weird because it's like, well, he only cares for them insofar as them being his slaves because he brainwashed them. So even if he is becoming more human, it's not quiet, but you know.
It's like reverse Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, yeah. I do hope that show gets a second season.
I do not. This show was ass. 3 out of 10.
Oh, even a 3. That's actually generous.
I mean, I wasn't bored.
Oh yeah. I mean
I was just angry.
This show
kind of
will
angry.
definitely keep you wide awake for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's about it.
So, Vermeil in Gold. This was another one you do not remember, right?
Well, I just rewatched it like 2 hours ago.
Oh,
I rewatched like.
Do you wanna summarize
half
it?
of the first episode. Yeah. So, the show is about a guy named Alto. That's how early I watched it that I actually remember his name. His name is Alto, and he's an all-star student in a magic academy. We're doing this again. The only problem is he's struggling to summon a familiar, and he will not be able to pass into the second grade unless he is able to summon a familiar. So, as he's pondering what to summon, I know this sounds like I'm reading straight from my notes, but I'm actually not. As he's pondering what to summon, a book on a library shelf just suddenly gains the life to move on its own, and it falls out of the bookshelf and onto his head, and the main character, Alto, reads it, and he summons a sexy demon MILF from the book. He decides to take it to school with him, and at first the teacher questions whether or not that actually is a familiar, but then she shows the teacher the familiar marking conveniently placed on her cleavage for fan service shots whenever we want to show the familiar marking.
Yeah, she's pretending to be a human because she's a demon, which is like a super like high level summon that most people can't do.
There's something about how demons are apparently really hated in the world that they're in, so that's the reason why she's pretending to be a human, because I don't know, she doesn't want to like cause trouble or anything. So then
Well, she said she did quote unquote a lot of naughty things, and that's why she was trapped in the book. So clearly she was doing some fucked up shit.
And then there's
but he's able to summon her and make her loyal because he has like such powerful mana, and that's also why he couldn't summon anything before, because he was like too strong.
I just love, I don't know, maybe it's because I have a dirty mind, but every time, because in the subs they describe it as potent mana, and every time it comes from the demon lady specifically, I don't know, my mind just goes...
It's definitely on purpose.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay. But then, okay, so the plot of the first episode is the childhood friend, Lilia, who is obviously in love with Alto, is super jealous of this super sexy demon who's clingy to... Well, by the way, the demon is Vermeil, who's super clingy to Alto, so... She challenges them to a duel.
She's like sitting on his lap in class.
Yeah, she's like sitting on his lap and like holding on to him whenever they're standing. And also she has to like kiss him to get mana from him sometimes. But yeah, so they get into a fight, and honestly, that's where I draw a blank because, like I said, I stopped watching like midway through. I know that she changes her mind Lilia changes her mind on her and becomes slightly less hostile by the end of the first episode.
I mean, not really even. Like, I mean, the demon chick just roasts the tsundere, and because she like said she'd do anything the guy wanted if she lost. So the guy was like, be friends and get along. And she's like, okay, fine.
Because that would definitely work. So I was rewatching the first episode earlier today, and maybe again it's because I've got way too much of a dirty mind. But okay, so the first thing I thought to myself was the beginning. Actually, I kind of felt this way about Calling of the Night as well, actually. The opening of the first episodes of these two shows, uh, it kind of feels like the opening of a Dojin. It really does. And I was thinking to myself, you know, I know this happens in a lot of anime, but a part of me feels a little suspension of disbelief over the fact that, like, because I feel like if most teenage boys were in a situation where they summoned a super sexy demon lady, they they probably wouldn't be so hesitant about you know doing what the demon lady Vermeil was clearly trying to goad the protagonist into doing.
So Coco, I watched the second episode of this show, so I can tell you that they do canonically have sex.
Well, as early as the second episode?
Yeah. She like she's like, "Oh, I need some of your mana." And she just starts taking off her clothes, and he is like, "Darn it, I knew that was what you wanted out of me." And then it like cuts to after, and the guy is like all grumpy, and she's like, "Haha, yay.
Oh,
We fucked."
that's actually surprising because like shows like this, they they have a lot of teasing, but they don't actually. Well, I suppose it is still teasing if it happened off screen, but you get the point. They never actually have the characters do that. Rarely, most of the time, not until like the very end. But that's actually surprising because I thought that like Lilia was for sure going to be like, despite it being about him and Vermeil, I for sure thought that Lilia was going to be like his main love interest. So like if he's already engaging in the devil's tango with another character, that's definitely a more interesting direction than I assumed it would go. For sure.
Well, he saw the other girl naked by accident. But that's just standard anime fare, so.
Oh yeah, I guess one thing I had written in my notes was that the show, plot-wise, it kind of reminds me of Familiar of Zero. Like the first episode is actually very similar to the first episode of Familiar of Zero because I mean, so much more like with how the protagonist summons a human familiar, only instead of a wimpy swordsman, it's a sexy demon lady. But like, I don't know. I guess the other difference is that like the protagonist in this show is actually good at everything, whereas Louise in Familiar of Zero is not good at everything. But like, there's the part where someone challenges the familiar to a duel because reasons, being bitchy for no reason. I don't know. This show just very much reminded me of that show and how I could probably be watching that one instead. I don't know. Oh, actually, another thing. Character art, it was okay, but I liked how the backgrounds were drawn. There was something like it felt kind of the way they colored the walls and stuff and the textures that they use on buildings. It felt like kind of realistic despite the fantastical setting. I thought it was cool how they did that. And also some of the sky shots.
Yeah, the show looked nice. I didn't love the character designs, but overall it looked pretty good.
Fine.
I mean, obviously this is a fan service show. Less so than the Labyrinth isekai. But it is like super fan servicey. The difference is I actually liked the fan service in this.
Yeah.
This show is like obviously like super power fantasy. That's like, yeah, he's like good at everything, and he has a sexy demon chick that is like under his command.
Yeah.
Although she did say she could kill him at any time, but like she's not going to.
There's also the part, like, he mentioned that, like, familiars can suspend the contract they have with their summoners at any time too. But she decided to stay with him because she's grateful for him freeing her from the book. You'll probably find more about what's going on with his character later, and there might be some drama there. I don't know. Maybe.
This show, I mean, it's fun. The fan service is fun. It's like, you know, even though it's fan service, the other show, it's like, wow, this is just like kind of fucked up. But this show, it's hilarious. She's sitting on his lap and like talking about how she wants to fuck him in front of their teacher, and their teacher is just like,
like the teacher tries to
and she like
the teacher tries to stop it, and then she's like, but as you can see, the familiars of all the other students are sitting on their summoners, all comfy like, so wouldn't it be unfair if you wouldn't
she
let
debated
me?
the teacher into letting a hot woman sit on the main character's lap in class.
Well, she's not and
wrong. Then the
other
girl got kicked out for being like, what the fuck?
Yeah, she was jealous of how comfy they were getting, and she was like, stop, what the hell are you doing? And then she got kicked out.
This show is definitely like a guilty pleasure show for me. I know it's not good, but I really like it.
Yeah. Therefore, it is good. No, I'm kidding.
I'd give it like a strong 6.
Oh, that's pretty good. I am mildly intrigued by how you mentioned that the characters did actually end up having sex in the second episode. That's just like, what?
Yeah, it was pretty unceremonious too. It kind of just happened.
Mm-hmm.
So next show is Isekai Oji-san, or Uncle from Another World is the English title. So, well, I have seen the first episode 3 times now. I feel like this is gonna be one of the bigger shows of the season. It's definitely one of the better ones. It starts off with the main character going to the hospital because his uncle has woken up from a coma. And we quickly find out that the uncle was in an isekai the whole time he was in a coma. Mm-hmm. The uncle is extremely ugly. For one, it's important to be aware of this. And he's also very clearly autistic.
Damn.
He's like obsessed with Sega and stuff.
Oh no.
And
that
we kind of just
explains
like
why he's a Sonic fan. It's because he's autistic. It makes sense now.
Yeah, true. Very true. And we kind of just like we slowly learn about his life in this other world through just like him doing stuff with his nephews.
He like projects it with magic on a magic screen.
Yeah, and we basically learn about how the basic gimmick of the show is that like we're slowly seeing the events of his life in the other world play out through stuff that's happening in the present, and we're learning about how like he got all these like cool isekai tropes are happening to him, but because he's just so like socially oblivious, he doesn't register that these are good things, and he just makes his own life horrible for the whole time he's gone. Like he's slowly like building up a harem. And he's just like, man, these these girls were so mean to me. They were saying that like they'd never want to be with an ugly guy
Well,
like me or like
part of it was also that he was isekai'd before the before tsunderes became popular in anime. So he didn't, or before the term became a thing, because there were.
he was unaware.
So he was unaware of the fact that those chicks secretly wanted to bang him. He just thought
Except they say in the second episode that he's seen Ava, so he knows.
That's true. Yeah.
Except apparently he didn't realize with Ava either
Yeah.
that it was a tsundere.
Yeah. Man, I really like the show. I mean, mostly for the references than the actual plot, if I'm being completely honest. But it is a funny show. The show, I don't know why, but like early on, for some reason, the show kind of reminded me of Bakuman a little bit. Like, I don't really know how to describe it. Mainly with the design of the nephew, it kind of just gave me like Bakuman vibes. I was half expecting like if I went, because I did look at the credits for this show. I was half expecting to see that the mangaka was the same as that manga, but it's actually not. It's completely unrelated. But yeah, no, I really like the uncle character. He despite his ugly appearance, he is cool and funny and has good taste in video games and anime.
He's a nice guy. He's a little bit different.
he he loves Sonic. He loves Sonic. The first Sonic game.
Sonic was his first love.
His first love was Sonic, and the first Sonic game he ever played was Sonic 2, and I was like, oh, that guy is like me, because my first Sonic game was Sonic 2. And that I also was super obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog, and that was the first video game franchise I ever was super into. And I don't know, like what made me interested in watching this show was I saw some clips of it on Twitter, and like it was like them taking shots at Sega on how Sega is basically nowhere near as relevant in I mean it kind of is relevant in the sense that they keep on licensing better companies. But aside from that, Sega is not really that relevant as a company anymore, and I found it really funny but also depressing at the same time because I'm like, damn, Sega, you were at the top, but now you're the butt of a joke in a comedy show. And
Yeah.
I just related so much with the protagonist when he was like, "What? You mean to tell me that Sega?"
Well, someone said this was like sponsored by Sega. Was that true?
I mean, it might be. I think it either is sponsored by Sega, or you might be confusing it with when they mentioned in the show that the uncle only watched Evangelion because Sega sponsored Evangelion. It probably is sponsored by Sega. Because it's like they don't just talk about Sonic the Hedgehog; they show like actual footage in there, and like there's a whole thing with like copyright laws in Japan are even stricter than they are like in the West. You can't get away with showing characters that blatantly in a show without censoring them even a little bit. That's why you'll have shows like Gintama. They like censor the characters' faces whenever they show other characters that they don't own. So it probably is sponsored by Sega. I didn't look into that. But yeah. I don't know. This whole show in a way it kind of felt like a throwback for people who were probably like around the same age as the uncle. Because I can't remember like what the line of dialogue was exactly, but like I remember the nephew said something that got the uncle like really depressed, and when he got depressed, it played like the Ghouls and Ghosts Game Over theme, and I was like, no one younger than like 30 is going to catch that unless they watch like a lot of reviews of older video games, like Angry Video Game Nerd or some shit. I was like, that was a deep cut. That was a deep cut. A deep cut
And then
reference.
he erased his own memories.
Yeah,
Because he can do that.
yeah, he can do that. He can. Oh yeah, he like tried to do that to like, because in the second episode, the like childhood friend, I guess, of the protagonist or the nephew, uh, she's like kind of like creeped out by the uncle and is like, you need to stop associating with this guy. And then she like
Reasonably.
yeah, to be fair.
Our friend Nabs left the call when she first met the uncle.
Yeah, he left the call because the uncle like midway through the scene, the uncle like pins the girl to the floor because and it looks like he's about to straight up assault her. But actually,
It's because she was in. He didn't know that she was invited to the apartment. She just appeared in their apartment.
yeah, yeah.
It wasn't his fault.
And then also, like later on, after she like witnessed him using his powers, he like wanted to erase her memory or something.
Yeah.
I think one thing. Okay, so because so far from the two episodes we've seen, it's kind of just the uncle sort of showing the nephew what he was getting up to, um, in the other world. The opening kind of spoils the future of the show a little bit because in the opening you see like the girls that he was like that were in his harem in the other world in the real world with them. So it kind of spoils it a little bit. The princess or whatever, they're gonna come into the real world at some point. Not entirely sure how, but you know, maybe they will also turn out to be people who had their own lives in the real world too, and they got isekai somehow, or maybe it's reverse isekai. But yeah, that was something
I
that I
feel sure
noticed.
it must be reverse isekai.
Yeah, that was something that I noticed. I mean, in general, I kind of find the premise of the show interesting because, you know, I've seen a couple of isekais, my fair share, and, you know, a lot of them, they do tend to end like if the main character returns back to his own world at all, because some of them just end with him living there for the rest of his life. But like if he does return to the real world, they usually don't like show the aftermath of that or like what happens. So I did find it kind of interesting how this is a show where like the premise is that the premise is sort of like a return to the real world sequel of an isekai we never got, um, which I find kind of interesting. So there's that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's an interesting premise,
Hmm.
and it was very funny.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Even though the humor, I mean, it is very depressing humor.
Yeah.
I think my favorite moment in the first episode was when the guy, like, it clicks for the nephew that he's talking about at Tsundere.
Hmm.
Tsundere.
Yeah.
And he just like he's like and you just see this like intense expression of shock at the realization of it.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm not a huge fan of shows that like make me feel sad after.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing, in a weird way, it's like kind of gloomy in a way. Like even the color palette of the show is very desaturated. It made me feel right at home as a person that lives in the United Kingdom. I was like, this show looks like England by how gloomy and gray it is to sort of match the sort of depressing humor that you described. Um, yeah,
I am glad that like it seems that the like isekai characters are going to start coming into the story,
hmm,
because if it was just like watching watching him like miss more and more stuff or something,
yeah.
like I don't know, that just sounds really sad.
I mean, it would also be kind of pointless if the whole show was just him describing his experience to his nephew, because then at that point it would kind of be like, well, why not just make an actual isekai show? So like, it's obviously gonna go somewhere beyond that eventually. Um,
Well, I can appreciate like parallel narratives, because like you can have like it's like Lost or something. This show is just like Lost because they both have flashbacks.
I think I think more of something like Hack Sign, but then with Hack Sign, it's like there are technically two separate stories going on at the same time. It's just that you're only allowed to witness one of them, which is kind of annoying about that show. But yeah, it's like there's an investigation going on into the why the protagonist is trapped in the game in the real world, but you're only allowed to see stuff that's actually going on in the game. That's pretty annoying with that show. But yeah.
Yeah. Ideally, the two stories going on should be complementing each other. That like we're learning, we're getting further context into both by seeing them at the same time.
Yeah.
I think they did accomplish that with the first couple of episodes. I'm just hoping it's not quite so bleak for the whole show.
You're kind of hoping it lightens up as it goes along. Well, I guess maybe, I mean, I suppose it depends on what the story is about. Because, like, maybe if it moves into the direction of the uncle sort of trying to readjust into real society or something, I don't know. Maybe
Unlikely. Doubt.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, I looked up the staff for this show. I forgot to get the studio for this. Uh, but the show is directed by a guy called Kawai Shigeki, and he worked on a few familiar shows. He was the assistant director on Blue Exorcist, and he did some episode directing on Naruto Shippuden, of course, Sword Art Online 2, of course, and Darling in the Franxx. Those are just the ones that I noticed. Uh, and the scriptwriter is a guy called Ihara Kenta, who worked on Ajin, a not so good show, and Fooly Cooly Alternative. Not
Another CG crime.
Yeah. And he also did a show we talked about last season, Tomodachi Game. Those are the yeah, but I feel like this show is probably better than most of those. Because
I mean, it
usually,
certainly looks better.
because usually you can determine whether a show, like sometimes, because I know people get really hyped off a show based on the people that are working on it. But then I saw like some of the shows that these people worked on, and I was like, hmm. But then that was after I'd already watched the show, so it didn't really color my perspective on this show at all. It's a good show, despite the staff having worked on some mid to verging on actually terrible shows. I guess it's because of the source material that they're working with. I always forget to write down the mangakas of these, but yeah.
I always forget that there is a manga.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there is a manga for this. I saw someone sharing pages of it in Digicord, and it's a the anime is a pretty good translation of the manga's art style, right down to the sort of bleak feeling it has, the sort of dark and gloomy feeling. Because sometimes animes don't really do a great job of being a one-to-one transition. Like the art styles change a little bit, or there's always something off. But it's a pretty good one-to-one between the manga and the anime for the most part.
I mean, the thing is, I might be a little bit biased because just like among everything else this season, this feels really good in comparison. I think I'd probably give it like a 7. I'll certainly watch more.
7 relative to the shows this season, or 7 in general?
Probably 7 in general. It feels like a strong 7 relative to the shows this season, but maybe it'd be like a light 7 if I was watching this in a good season.
Yeah. Also, I did write down the studio. The studio is called, I have no idea how to pronounce this. Eight Liar Atelier, and they Atelier Pont Dark. Goodness, they haven't done many shows. There's only one out of the very few that they did that I recognized, which is an ONA on Ganbare Doku-chan, which is a very good web manga series. Go and read that. But yeah, that's pretty much the only thing that they have, the only notable thing that they have. So I'm guessing this is a fairly young studio, and for a studio that doesn't have a lot of stuff to their name, this is a pretty good show, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good. It's funny. It's got good direction. So good on them.
Mm-hmm.
Next is Lycoris Recoil.
It's Lycoris. This whole time I've been saying licorice, lol.
No, I think you're right. I'm probably mispronouncing it. It's probably Lycoris Recoil.
Yeah, Recoil, yeah. Because they use guns. So this show is a show that gives the setting.
Oh, it's A1 Pictures.
Yeah, it's A1 Pictures.
We were talking about A1 earlier.
Yeah.
There it is.
It's a show about an organization of people, mainly young girls, who go around and keep the city of Tokyo safe in the shadows. It is a covert organization that takes care of criminals and potential terrorists before they have the chance to cause any real harm.
Yeah,
so this is
Lolly CIA.
So this is, yeah, pretty much. So this is them giving like an anime explanation as to why crime rates aren't so high in Tokyo. LOL. It's not the Yakuza keeping their cronies in check. It is the Lycoris. So the first episode starts out with the main character, shit, I forgot her name, black-haired girl, and she's with her team, and they need to stop a trading of illegal guns. The only problem is one of the bad guys has another Lycoris held hostage. So they're not entirely sure what to do there until the black-haired girl just decides to act on her own, and she starts blasting, and she kills all of them, which wasn't part of the mission.
She guns them down with a machine gun.
Yeah, which wasn't part of the plan because they needed to find out from them where the weapons they're trading are. So because she didn't follow orders during that mission, she ends up being transferred from the DA, I have no idea what DA actually stands for, to another unit called Licro something, I forgot. And she works with this other top-ranking Lycoris called Chisato. And her name bothers me a little bit because every time I read it in the subtitles, my brain interprets it as cishet. But yeah, and the whole gimmick between the two of them is that Takina, who is the black-haired girl I just remembered, she's a cold-hearted killer who is committed to the mission, even if it means doing things that she wasn't ordered to.
She's a loose cannon.
Yeah. And Chisato is like the more happy-go-lucky, cheery person, slightly less intense, and has more value of human life and stuff like that. So the whole point of the show, I'm guessing, is that it's gonna be cishet, humanizing Takina and helping her to lighten up a little bit and become less intense and maybe even become slightly less of a murderous psychopath.
Yeah, this other like unit or whatever that she got transferred to is like they do like public service basically. They
Yeah,
do the non-action stuff, which is why she's salty about getting transferred there.
they do like a mixture of both. Yeah.
I thought that was like the point, but then by the end of the episode, they're like back to doing action stuff. So I guess
Mm,
not.
yeah. It's like a mixture of both. Because at the beginning of the episode, you do see Chisato like heading over to the mission that Takina was at, the one that she failed at. So like, and you see Mika there as well, the boss of the unit that she's been transferred to. Um, Also more African representation in anime. I see you. Uh, Also the hands actually colored properly. I see that too. Good on you, A1 Pictures. Uh, you probably don't
Yeah,
even know
that
what I'm
dude's
talking about,
cool.
Arlon. You don't even know. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about with the hands. But
Is it just like the
no, no.
uh
There's like a thing. 'Cause like with black people, the hands aren't fully black all the way around.
yeah, the skin is like a bit lighter.
Yeah. So I was just because I remember there were people who were like making a whole fuss about how artists don't do that on Twitter. So I was just joking around by saying, "Hey, I see you A1
Gotcha.
Pictures actually remembering to get the hands correct. I see
I
you."
mean, any representation of an African person that isn't incredibly racist in anime is that's a W.
Yes. It is good to have an African in an anime that isn't generic big bald guy with gun. But anyway, uh so that's the whole point of the show. I don't know. I found it kind of interesting with the first episode. I thought that the opening sequence was kind of just going to be the setup for why um Takina ended up getting reassigned, but it's actually still somewhat relevant because later on in the show, in the episode rather, they end up taking on another mission, which is so there's this girl, I think she's a model or something, and she's like getting stalked by someone, but it turned and she like thinks it's an obsessive fanboy or something. But like Takina and Chisato, they quickly realize, oh no, it's actually the criminals we were supposed to bust during the arms trade that are stalking her because she happened to be at the scene of the crime taking a selfie with her fiance on the day that they were trading the weapons. So so they were like, "Oh shit, they're probably after her because they have a picture of them like at the scene of the crime or whatever." And I don't know, I just found that kind of interesting how it was all relevant. It's a very minor thing, but
And then the main girl just let them capture her, by the way. She
yeah,
intentionally stayed back so they would attack.
she like used her as a decoy to like goad them into coming out. Um, and that's when like we see the two different mindsets between Takina and Chisato, where Chisato is all about not killing anyone and using non-lethal bullets, and Takina is more like this sort of cold-blooded killer who, you know, she's all about the mission. She's very reckless, um, which is kind of interesting because between the two of them, you'd think that Chisato would be the more reckless one because she's the one with the sort of hyper happy-go-lucky personality, whereas Takina is the one who's like more committed to the cause. There's also like an ongoing like plot with like hackers or something where they're trying to find the addresses of each other and
That
like
was the worst part of the episode. That was so boring.
yeah, because I accidentally while I was rewatching the first episode of this, I accidentally watching the second one. Um, and it's like revealed that like at the end of the first episode, it's revealed that like one of the guys, I think he's a boss that works for the Lycoris organization. That I didn't quite get that. He was pretending to be another hacker who was friends with the hacker they were after the whole time, and then he like blows that hacker's house up because he hacked into the Lycoris organization's comms during the mission that they were doing in the opening of the episode. And the second episode, opens from the hacker's perspective, showing that I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Question mark. Um, this when I first watched this show, I wasn't really paying attention, but upon my rewatch, I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was too bad. Um, it's a good-looking show. It's not terrible. It is like standard, like A1 look, but it's not a bad-looking show, I'd say. I don't know. What do you think about the visuals?
I mean, the best part was definitely the action. When they like teamed up to like gun down all the kidnappers. That was like a really cool scene. And obviously like the animation all looked fine.
Yeah.
But overall it was all just pretty boring. It also kind of feels like a bit of propaganda to me. Even though I feel like it doesn't really... Like, it's trying to make them look good because they're like the guardians of the city or whatever. But they are, or at least the main girl is a terrible cop. Because like, there's the part where like they walk into like a restaurant or something, and the other girl, the partner, like gives them a bag of something, and they're like, "Oh, this is the good stuff." And the main girl like reaches for her gun and the other one has to stop her, and then afterwards she says like, "I was about to gun down those guys if you hadn't have stopped me." And it's like, what? You were going to gun down a bunch of people because they like, you thought they like bought some weed? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's not good.
I think that's like the point of the show, is that like she is very high strung, and like, because in the show, like the boss, like she said, Kizunuki or something, she says, like, hopefully you learn something from Chisato. So she's probably hoping that by like being around Chisato, like Takina kind of mellows a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it also turns out it's not even drugs. It's like coffee or something, because they run a coffee store. She was about to gun down some yakuza, because those were yakuza guys, by the way. She was about to gun down some yakuza just for buying coffee. Amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was. They mentioned some stuff about events that happened prior, like how Chisato protected the radio tower that's like at the center of the city. We're probably gonna get some backstory in that later on, possibly. Actually, one thing I do kind of like about this show is the eye catch, because I feel like when you look at the eye catch, you kind of get a sense of what this show is about from just looking at it, because it's both Chisato and Takina naked, of course, fan service. And Takina is holding a gun into Chisato's face, while Chisato is holding a flower in Takina's face. And I like it because
Oh, that's cool.
I feel like it like tells you almost immediately what the show is about, and sort of instantly tells you that what the characters are like. The only thing I don't like about Chisato is her personality. Personally, I'm not the fan of the hyper energized girl. I feel like it's a personality that's so difficult to get right because it's so easy to make it feel forced. And in the case of this show, it does feel a little bit forced. It's not Vermeil from Final Fantasy 13 levels of forced, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
I didn't really care about any of the characters.
There is one character, the boss, the one that I mentioned earlier, Kizunuki or whatever. I was so confused by her at first because I had a hard time telling if that was a dude or a chick. the one with the short red hair. Like, obviously they had the voice of a woman, but like they were doing like a really deep voice that for a while there it was hard for me to tell if it was a man or an effeminate woman or, you know. And I had to look up credits, but I wasn't entirely sure because in the credits it listed a voice actress, but that doesn't necessarily mean the character is female. So, you know, I was very confused. And then I saw them refer to her as Miss, and I was like, oh, okay. But she also kind of gives me like the red hair and the way her face is drawn. She like reminds me of like NPCs from Pokemon, but like I don't know which one. But when I look at her, I just think of like a character from a Pokemon game. And I've been racking my brain trying to think which one it is. If anyone looks at that character and knows what characters I might be talking about, please let me know. But yeah.
I don't even remember the character you're talking about.
Yeah, that's fair. She only appears in like 2 scenes.
This show was pretty boring.
Yeah.
I give it like a light 5.
Mm-hmm. That's not too bad. For a seasonal.
Any final thoughts?
That's about it. That's probably the one I've had the most to say about so far.
Next is Parallel World Farmacy. You probably don't remember this one, right?
I don't remember anything about this one. Oh, wait, is this the one... Is this the one with the character who looks like Sora from Aki Sora? Is this the one where I said that? Oh, never mind, go on.
It might be. I don't remember.
Never mind, go on.
I don't know what that looks like. This is an isekai, so of course I liked it.
It's the one where one where an adult ends up in a kid's body, right? Kind of like, yeah.
Yeah. So this show starts off. Parallel World Farmacy starts off in like this sterile lab with like only like a couple of people there, and it's this like pharmacist just slaving away at his job, and he's thinking like, fuck, I really wish I was in like the side of pharmaceuticals where you're actually interacting with people, because this job is just so lonely and it sucks. Then he goes to sit down and have a little break, and he just dies. He dies from overwork.
That's pretty. That's very Japanese of this show.
Yeah. Extremely so.
Yeah.
And then in another world, in, you know, a standard isekai fantasy world, the son of a pharmacist gets struck by lightning, and it causes this pharmacist who just died to enter his body and take him over.
Mm-hmm.
And he like quickly learns that like there's magic in this world, and he goes to practice with his magic tutor, and he's like, all right, let's do a water blast. And he tries to do one, and he just makes this like godly tsunami of water come out of his staff and, you know, create like a giant wave on this lake. And his tutor is like, okay, you're not human. And he's like, no, I swear it's all fine. And she's just like, no, don't hurt me, please. But they make up. And meanwhile, his dad is like the top pharmacist in the country. But it's, you know, olden times. So they think that like, you know, tail of newt potions or whatever are how you cure disease. Mm-hmm. And they get a call from the queen, who is like bedridden, sick, terminally ill. And like all the top doctors of the country come to visit the queen. And they're like, yeah, we can totally cure you. It's fine. Just take this medicine. And the kid is like, shit, they're about to euthanize her. And so he's like I know how to cure her. And obviously his dad is like, what? No, you don't. But he's like, no, trust me. Trust me. I magically have new knowledge. So the queen is like, all right, let's hear him out. And the dad relents. And he starts giving the queen medicine for it. I think this is like in the second episode. But the queen gets better and she's like, yeah, you can have your own pharmacy. And that's the start of the show.
So this is basically like, because this is kind of like another trend in anime where it's kind of like guy with basic knowledge from the real world. Well, maybe not basic because he's like a trained pharmacist, but guy from his perspective with basic knowledge goes into slightly underdeveloped isekai world and imparts his knowledge and his gifts onto this new world. It's kind of like a
Yeah, it's very much in the same vein as like Ascendance of a Bookworm.
Yeah, or
I think there's a name for this
like,
genre.
What's that other show that we watched on that other seasonal Discharge? That one, the one with the saber clone. I forget what it's called.
The what?
The one with the saber clone. The one where the guy helps the kingdom with its finances and its economy and stuff.
Oh, Realist Hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same type of deal.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, that's even like sort of its own thing, because that's like that in itself is like its own subgenre of like isekai, where a dude uses his current smart skills to lead a country.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely prefer this sort of thing over, I don't know, like, because with these ones, it's almost like they're highlighting like regular people, whereas I think of something like regular people in certain industries. In a way, it's like highlighting the working class and being like, hey, these are people who are very good at what they do. Let's appreciate them. Unlike something which is kind of in this genre, I haven't actually seen it, but in another world with my smartphone, where it's just a dude with his smartphone and looking up everything. I don't know.
The thing about shows like this is it feels kind of weird to me, because it's like it almost feels irresponsible that you could be like a modern person with all of this knowledge and you wouldn't use it to just like take over the world. Like the fact that he would just run a pharmacy is kind of like, well, you know what airplanes are. Why aren't you telling them about airplanes? You know?
Mm-hmm. Actually, that kind of reminds me of like kind of like Familiar Zero, where like the main character of that show was not the first guy to ever end up in that world. There was another guy who, like, we never meet that guy, but there was another guy who ended up in that world like way before him, and he was like a pilot, and he actually got into that world by flying a plane, not a jet, but a regular plane, into the moon. Think about that.
What?
Think about that for a second, guys. Into a full moon, a regular fighter plane. And
I didn't know this was a thing you could do.
yeah, and that's how the main character. Well, I mean, the main character tries to get back home, but in the end, he decides to stay. But like, there's this whole thing where they find out what oil is from like leftover oil in the plane, and they're like able to recreate it using magic, and it's like really cool because like the teacher or whatever ends up taking an interest in like stuff from like the real world. There's also like a whole thing where it's like one of the secret hidden weapons that they have to find, like a hidden staff or whatever, it actually just turns out to be a rocket launcher. So that's like a kind of an
Interesting.
yeah. Bringing up Familiar Zero for the second time, lol. But yeah, that's what I think of when I think of like educating people in fantasy world about like stuff that we have in the real world, like airplanes and stuffs.
And like I understand to an extent that like this guy's expertise is in pharmaceuticals, so it's like there's a limit to how much he can do with that other stuff, but it still just feels I feel a little weird about that.
Yeah.
You know, at least he's doing something.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's not like Ascendance of a Bookworm where like she just doesn't care at all and she's just like, I just want to read books.
I think another show that kind of does what you're describing is high schoolers have it in another have it easy in another world. I wouldn't recommend watching that show though because that show is actually garbage. The reason why I think it kind of does what you're saying is because it's not just one person that gets isekai'd, it's like multiple different people with like different skill sets. I mean, most of their
They're
skill
like
sets
all geniuses, right?
yeah, they're like all geniuses.
Yeah.
Most of their skill sets are still centered around economic stuff, but it's like, you know, it's closer to that because it's like people with different skill sets. They bring other stuff. I mean, like, I know it's a bit of a tangent, but I remember watching Mother's Basement review about that show, and I remember him being really mad about it because he's like, these characters are geniuses, but he's teaching them how to go. They're teaching this new isekai world how to have the same trashy capitalistic society that we have now, instead of a better. Because they like teach them how to trade and stuff. So I don't know. I just remember finding that really funny.
I agree. I kind of got mad at Realist Hero too over that.
Mm-hmm.
That he was like his way of making slavery quote unquote illegal was like he was just institutionalizing it or something. He was like we need to educate the slaves and then it's gonna be okay because we'll start paying them or something. It was so dumb.
Wait, that just sounds almost like real life.
It's because he was inspired by real life, but real life is bad.
Yeah, that's true.
But you know,
I don't know. It's really it's weird because I think these kinds of shows are, in a weird way, trying to be educational through fantasy. So it's not necessarily about trying to create a better world. It's about teaching people how the world works, but in a way that's like fun, even if it's showing like or showing people like the more trashy aspects of how a world works in a positive light. I don't know.
yeah. I liked this show. This is the kind of show that's like crack for me that like I watched it. I like binged the whole show. As soon as we finished the group watch, I went and watched the rest of it that's out right now.
Wait. Oh, okay. For a second there, I thought the whole thing had aired already.
No. There's like 5 episodes out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely like it's another power fantasy type thing where it's like, yeah, like I know everything. I'm a better pharmacist than my top pharmacist in the country dad. Even though they do try and like balance it a little bit, that they're like, oh, the dad is good at the interpersonal side of it, which is what he cares about. So he like has a lot of respect for him. But
yeah,
it's like literally.
Would you say this is your favorite of the season?
When he diagnoses the queen, literally, it's literally the meme. Everyone clapped. They just accepted it. And they were like, you've changed medicine forever, young man. And they all clapped.
No. Now that is unrealistic because in the real world, we have people questioning the shit out of medicine, no matter how much evidence there is that it works.
Yeah.
So that is very unrealistic, indeed. The thing is, if you're gonna write a show about medicine, you gotta have like the conspiracy theorists who are like, oh no.
Well, you know, it's like a newer thing, the like anti-vax stuff. In the olden days, if you were anti-vax, we just broke into your house and forced you to get vaxxed. So Times have
Bruh.
changed.
That's some Australian shit going on there. Australia still does that. Well, they did anyway. But anyway, would you say that this is your favorite show of the season?
No.
Uh,
Or maybe. I don't know. This wasn't a very good season. Probably.
yeah.
I feel like I almost might like Call of the Night more than this.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you're right. This is my favorite show of the season.
Yeah. I don't really have a favorite, I don't think. I think the ones that left the most, like the biggest impression on me this season, are Lycoris, Call of the Night, and Rwby. But yeah. Also, do we still have more shows to go?
We're close to the end. Yeah, I'd give this show probably a 6.
I wanted to make sure because I felt like this sounds like wrap up talk, and I should probably be sure that we actually have shows left.
We've got a couple more.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, that's about it.
All right. Yeah, it's cool.
I'm actually surprised I had anything at all to say here.
If you like Ascendance of a Bookworm, check out this show because it's very similar. Or there was another isekai that we reviewed, like, or maybe we didn't. Maybe it was one of the seasons we didn't cover, but
The season before last?
there was literally there were 2 isekai. There was an isekai one season about a parallel world pharmacy, and then there was another one the season after that, which I thought was a lot better, which was also about a parallel world pharmacy. So this is like the third isekai this year about a parallel world pharmacy.
Is this gonna be like the new like virtual reality trend instead of video games, it's now pharmacy?
That's just such a specific premise to make 3 shows about in a row.
Oh no. This is the funded by Big Pharma anime trend.
Yeah, it's alright.
Yeah.
Next show is Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. Do you remember this one?
Did we watch that? Did we watch that?
Yes, we did. We group watched it.
Damn, I don't remember.
I think it was the last session of group watches we did.
I don't remember a single thing about that one. Like with everyone I remembered like a little bit, but this one I remember like nothing.
So the main character of this is like a very generic average Joe, and he starts getting followed around by a talking lizard.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, upon getting followed around by this lizard, he immediately just is like, oh, I must be hallucinating, go away. He
Yeah,
like
he
throws
chucked it
the
out the
lizard out
window.
his window immediately.
Yeah.
And the lizard is telling him, like, bro, you're the chosen one. You have to save the world from, like, these alien things that are invading. And he's like, don't care. Fuck off. And he's, like, begging him the whole episode until he meets this chick who says she's the princess. He's the knight, and she's the princess, apparently.
Yeah.
And she like sits him down and explains, like, listen, these crazy alien things are attacking. I know, like, this must be a lot to take in, but you really got to help us out. And then she like takes him up to a rooftop, and she's like, all right, bro, look in the sky at the thing that's about to destroy the earth. And he's like, what? There's nothing there. And she's like, no. Now that you know it's there, look again and you'll see it. And he looks into the sky, and there's a giant mallet hovering over the earth. And she's like,
I don't know
mallet.
why, but when they showed that shot, it really reminded me. It really reminded me of FLCL for some reason. I don't know why.
It was
Like-
the most memorable part of the episode. That's for sure.
Like with the giant irons or whatever the hell they have in FLCL. I don't know.
So this mallet is going to smash the world like an egg or something.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, upon seeing this, it starts to sink in. He's like, okay, I probably have to help. But like, I'm just some dude. I suck. Like, I can't do anything. And she's like, no, I trust you. He's like, do you though? So she walks off the roof of this building and is falling to her death. And she's like, all right, you gotta use your powers to save me or I'll die. So he also jumps off the roof and manages to, at the last second, use his powers that he apparently has to break her fall. So in the end, he's finally he's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll save the world.
He's like very he's like inspired. I remember like how inspired he was by like the speech he gave, and he was like so committed to. He was like ready to be so committed to her. He was invested.
Yeah, she was
Like,
very
he was
charismatic.
Yeah, like he was super into it. It wasn't necessarily just a matter of like, damn, I have to do this because the world's gonna get destroyed. It was also like, this person's really cool. I don't mind pledging my allegiance to them.
Yeah, for sure, it was more about the girl than the world ending.
Yes, he's being led by Dick.
And she says in the second episode like that she wants to be the one to destroy the world because the world is hers, and if
What?
it's still there after she's gone, it wouldn't really be hers.
Huh.
So it's definitely not about saving the world.
Was she saying that? Because I know like I remember what her personality was like. Was she saying that sincerely, or?
It certainly seemed like it.
That is weird. Can you imagine if like after the show ends, it just like time skips to her being on her deathbed, and right as she feels herself exiting, she like snaps her fingers and the world blows up?
It would be an interesting direction to take the ending.
Yeah. There is one thing that I kind of remember from the show that kind of caught me off guard. I don't know if it was just me misunderstanding or maybe I misread the subtitles. But there's a scene where he like uses his magic powers to like peek up the teacher's skirt or something. But like before that scene, there's a scene where he's getting scolded by that teacher. And like, was it just me or was there a point where like the teacher acknowledged that the lizard thing was there, even though I swear it's supposed to be like invisible to like everyone except him and the princess? Like she just casually
No,
acknowledges that it's there and
I
then she
think
walks away.
people can see the lizard. They just can't hear him talking, I think.
Yeah, because it was
'Cause
really
she
weird
did
because it was
acknowledge it.
like, yeah, it was like she greeted it and then she walked away. And I was like, what?
Yeah,
was
she said something about like why is that lizard on your shoulder or something.
Yeah. Also, I was not expecting that deep voice.
I mean, it wasn't the worst show.
Hmm.
It was kind of bland, but
You know, to me, what I think of with a show like this is a show like, for the third time, Familiar of Zero, only this time it's a guy who's willingly becoming someone's familiar or a servant or knight instead of forcefully, and based on the character's personality, the girls, I can appreciate that this probably isn't going to be an abusive one, unlike that show. At the very least, I hope it won't be. I mean, it doesn't matter because I'm probably not going to watch it. But if I were, I would very much appreciate the fact that it's not going to be like that.
Yeah, she's giving him confidence in himself.
Yeah.
Oh, there's like this thing about his grandpa, I think, like, told him, like, you can't have friends. They'll just hold you back. And they have, like, this super on the nose, over the top symbolism with, like, every time, like, he flashes back to the grandpa saying that, there are, like, chains all around his body as he's, like, being held back by the words. To the point that I wasn't sure if this was, like, a curse or something.
It could be, maybe. Like he just cursed anti-socialist to his life. People are no longer being interested with him. Lol.
Yeah.
Damn. If that is an actual curse, if anyone knows the cure to that curse, please let me know. My Discord is. No, I'm
we're
kidding.
all waiting. We're all waiting for it.
Yes. My Discord is. No, I'm kidding. Don't.
No, join us at the social discharge.
Link in the description.
The monster designs were kind of interesting. They kind of remind me of the aliens in Parasite. They have like these weird, like, mouths on the sides of their faces. Overall, it was just kind of
I didn't
milquetoast.
see the second episode. I didn't see the second episode, so I don't.
It was in the first episode that it shows up briefly.
Oh. Guess I forgot that, yeah.
It does like the horror movie thing where it like suddenly appears in your face, you know?
Yeah, a jump scare.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a jump scare for us, but it was for him. This show certainly had personality. I'm sure someone likes it, but I was mostly just kind of bored. It just didn't have quite enough going on to get me invested, I suppose.
You know, one thing that I kind of don't like about a lot of shows coming out this season? I'm noticing, well, not this season, even the past few seasons, a lot of them will come out with only just the two main characters alone in the first episode before they introduce the rest of the cast later on. And I kind of don't like that because I feel like that's one of the reasons why the episodes feel so bland is because there's only two characters.
A lot of them they don't even really get into like the main premise in the first episode. Like the Labyrinth one doesn't show the Labyrinth.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like, it kind of makes it very easy to not have a good first impression. That's one of the reasons why I was kind of keen on. I mean, I didn't end up watching that many episode 2s outside of the ones that we group watched. But that's why I was kind of keen on doing episode 2s because I was like, I feel like I'm not getting the best impression of what this show is about just off of the first episode alone. Like with some of them, you definitely get a general idea, but I don't know. That's just something I noticed with shows coming out these past 2 seasons.
I mean, now that you mention it,
in the episodes.
Now that you mention it, I did like pretty much every show that I watched the episode 2 of. I feel like my opinion went up after I watched it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's just the slow to start season, huh?
It seems like the new shows are not very great at they're not very great at hooking you with the first episode. Which is probably why the 3-episode test is a thing. But yeah.
6 out of 10. Anything else to say?
No, that's it.
I think that's all the shows we group watched. I watched Tokyo Mew Mew like right before we started, or Tokyo Mew Mew New. It's a. I assume you didn't watch this, right?
Nope.
This is a reboot of an older magical girl show. The main character is like a middle school girl who she really wants to fall in love. And she's got like a crush who's like a nice soft boy. And she manages to like ask him out on a date to go to like a museum for endangered species. And they go to this museum and they're walking around and he's like, "Oh man, it's so cool that someone else is interested in endangered species." And she's like, "Oh, I actually don't really know about that stuff. I just like happen to have these tickets." And he's like, "What?" Well, he like explains what endangered species are. And she's like, "Man, I never knew about that. That's so sad." It kind of reminded me of like the just heard about racism meme. It's like, man, just heard about endangered species. That shit sucks.
Yeah.
And then they get attacked by a giant rat.
What?
And she gets like yeah, they there's like a spirit thing or something and it like enters the body of a rat. And the rat like turns all giant and like mutant looking, and it starts attacking them. And then she gets hit with this like crazy beam thing or something, and it has like, it looks kind of like when Spider-Man gets his powers, you like see like this like montage of like evolution, and then there's like you see a like cat spirit enters her body, and then she gets cat girl powers and gets turned into a magical girl.
What you're describing sounds like what you see when Ben is turning into an alien in Ben 10.
Yeah, it was kind of like that.
Only hopefully slightly less horrific, maybe?
No, it wasn't horrific. It was like a magical girl transformation. Okay. So she like clumsily manages to fight off this rat, and her date is like knocked out. So these other people that apparently gave her the powers approach her, and they're like, "Yeah, we need to take you to our HQ or whatever, and like we'll take care of your BF." So she goes to the HQ, and it's like a pretty ribbon house thing, and that's where the first episode ends. It's kind of interesting. It looks, the style of the show is like an older anime, but because it's new, it's shaded like a newer anime, which is like kind of jarring.
Like old art style, but because it's digitally made.
Yeah. It's got like that gradient on everything.
Cell shaded shows look very different. They have a slightly watered down kind of look.
And I also checked out the original, and it was mostly pretty similar, but I gotta say, I think I liked the original better. I feel like it had more personality to it.
So would you say old good, new bad?
In this case, yes.
Okay.
Or I guess I'd say reboot bad, if anything, because that tends to be true.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of old shows because we're getting like a new Urusei Yatsura, and it kind of does a similar thing where it's basically the same art style as the original series, but digitally colored and everything. It's kind of weird.
I don't know why. I mean, for one, like the directing was more interesting. Like the original had like interesting shot composition and stuff compared to the new one.
Mm-hmm.
And they cut out some of the more charming parts. Like once she gets the cat powers in the original, she's like she keeps accidentally like doing cat things. It's like, the Will Ferrell turning into a dog movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, she got a fish at the cafeteria and she like picked it up with her mouth. Or like she keeps accidentally adding nya to the end of all her sentences.
Or it's like that one Catwoman movie with Halle Berry, where she keeps purring.
Never heard of
Wait, oh man, it's a really well. I'm a bit biased towards it because I watched it as a kid and I have slight nostalgia for it. But it's a really bad Catwoman movie that came out in the early 2000s, and like basically it starts with Catwoman dying, and then she gets like a cat breathes 9 lives into her, and so she becomes a literal Catwoman. She doesn't look like a cat, but like, she has the quirks of a cat. She purrs during sex. Yes, that happens. Like during the sex scene, she's like literally purring. She like rubs her nose and like, yeah, she acts like a cat. It's really weird. Like she gets found.
You watched this movie as a kid.
Yeah. And she like gets caught by like this witch or whatever who knows a thing or two about why she's like that, like eating fish out of a lake or something.
This show is alright. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10, but like definitely watch the original over this. If you like cat girls and you want to watch a magical girl show, watch the original.
Mm-hmm. And then go watch Catwoman.
Maybe don't do that. But if you want to. Well, I think that is every show we watched this season.
Holy cow. This is the longest season of Discharge, I think. Closing on 3 hours. Our seasonal Discharge is
well, some of the older ones were long like this when we had more people on.
Mm-hmm. So,
what are your overall thoughts on this season, Coco?
Well, not great. There were a couple shows, like 1 or 2, that I thought were okay, like Lycoris and Call of the Night, and I guess Rwby. But most of it, I wasn't really paying attention during the group watches, and the reason why I only ended up rewatching 2.5 shows is because the idea of rewatching those shows was so painful that I couldn't bring myself to do it. So, to sum it up, not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the worst anime season I have ever watched.
Damn.
It was so boring. Even the shows I quote unquote liked were like, I mean, like my ratings say it all. I gave almost everything like a 6 or below.
Yeah.
This season was so mid. And the thing is, we don't watch sequels, so like we got The Devil is a Part-Timer sequel, and that show was great. I rewatched the first season, so I'm sure the second season will be worth watching. We got more Made in Abyss, which is
that show's still
an
going
amazing
on.
anime. Yeah.
I thought it was over. That's surprising.
I don't know about the manga, but the anime is still going.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know. Even that, like, I don't know if that can save this season for me. This was a really bad season.
Yeah.
The good news is, next season has, like, next season is going to be insane. We're getting like Bleach is coming back after 10 years. Mob Psycho is getting its final season. Chainsaw Man is getting its anime. Pop Team Epic season 2. So like next season, maybe it'll make this season worth it. But yeah, this season did not have a lot to love.
Next season is basically like, I don't know what the originals look like, but it does look like the returns at the very least might make it good. But yeah, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
some of the shows this season during the group watch, like, I remember one time I said, like, I don't know if you remember, but I said, hey, if at any point I fall asleep while we're doing this, just kick me out of the call. And I remember during one of the group watches, I actually was trying so hard not to.
It was a slog.
I mean, like, the thing is, I feel like I say that about almost every season, really. But, like, at the same time, I feel like, because you'll have something like Shikakomori from last season, and, like, it wasn't, like, a great show or anything. But, like, I don't know. It was easier to remember, because I remember, like, for that season, I didn't have many notes for that either. But I still was able to talk more about shows because they were easier to remember. The ones that I saw.
You mean Shikimori?
Yeah, I don't know why I keep on saying Shikomori, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I remember, like, last season, even though I was missing notes for some shows, I still remembered them enough to actually talk about them without having even rewatched them, you know? Whereas with this season...
That show would have fit right in with this season, for the record.
Whereas with this season, it's not quite.
Last season was definitely better than this.
From last season anymore, except from the standouts. So,
I mean, last season we got Kong Ming, which,
that's pretty much
I mean,
that.
Please watch that before anything else this season. That show is infinitely better.
I've still only seen the first episode of that, but I have it on my on hold.
You gotta watch it. I watched some with my friend the other day, and he like binged the whole show as soon as he got home.
Yeah, it's pretty good from the first episode. Animation's fantastic.
Well, Coco, do you want to shout out any of like your socials or anything?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Tamika Likes to Draw, or I think it might still be Tammy, I don't know. Instagram is the same. You can find me on DeviantArt at Amazing Artist Red. I was about to say Yellow, but Amazing Artist Yellow is someone else far more talented than I. You can also find me on Discord in the social Discharge server. So if you want to chill, come join the social Discharge server. Oh, and I also have another project which I'm planning on max reviving called Sonic Saturn. There's a server for that too. Probably not going to be linked in that. I don't plan on linking that anywhere, at least until I get that project back in motion. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
I am Aarlon. You can read my comic, Big Billy's Adventure Everywhere, at bigbilliesadventureeverywhere.xyz. It's pretty bad, but it's better than the anime this season. I'll give you that.
It's good. It's good.
So yeah, check it out. Thank you everyone for listening to this season's Seasonal Discharge. I hope you'll join us again next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. His name's Olo, he's just like a samurai.